Of course. So I'm Mark. I'm 28 years old. I've been living in Canada for the last 4 years almost. I grew up in Beirut, Lebanon, and I went to a kind of Catholic school, Jesuit school, and I really think that the strictness of my upbringing shaped the person I am as an adult. Um, it's sometimes I tell people that we used to like wear costumes to school, and they're surprised and they feel like, wow, I thought this was only in the 50s, and I'm like, no, and growing up, it kind of alienated us from other schools, I feel. But when you grow up and when you become independent, especially living in Canada alone in the cold, you start realizing the benefits of having a strict upbringing because it teaches you discipline. And I did my studies in Lebanon as well. I'm an industrial engineer. I worked here in a few different fields, and my last job was as an engineer in logistics. It didn't work out, and after that, I ended up deciding to shift my mindset completely. That we will discuss later on, and that's how I kind of decided to start my own thing. And here we are now, almost 18 months into it.
And so, besides work, what do you do outside of work? Do you have any passions? And do you think those passions affected what you were attempting to build or what you started building or your professional ambitions?
Um, Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I realized maybe a year and a half ago when I wanted to start my company, I realized that I had to make to take a big decision, which was I need to work on my passion. Otherwise, I'm gonna be miserable for the rest of my life. So I'm a big runner. I started running, serious running, maybe 2 years ago. I used to play football growing up, the real football, not the American thingy. So I when I started that, I didn't have the idea early on of my startup, but eventually when I wanted to start something to solve a problem, like founders do, I realized that there was a gap that I could cover, and we'll discuss this obviously later also. And I decided to combine my passion with my profession. So this is how it came to be. So I can tell you, my passion is running, is being athletic. I spend most of my times outdoors, discovering parks in the area, discovering where outdoorsy people like to go and hang out. And it's exactly the mission and the vision of my company. It encapsulates this dynamic, and we're building a product to facilitate this for everyone.
The topic of passion is interesting because sometimes there are things that you really appreciate and like doing on the side, but they're not necessarily activities that you can materialize into a business. So do you think that you got lucky from this aspect, or was it just natural for you to make this work at it? Like, how do you think you turn a passion into a business? How does that work?
Interesting that you're asking about luck. I learned a lesson early on in my life that you make your own luck. If you're working hard every day, if you're passionate about whatever you're doing, not necessarily work, if even you're passionate about your hobbies, it's gonna translate into success within this domain. So to be completely honest about it, um, yes, maybe it feels like luck, but I know deep down that it's not luck. You have to manifest these things. You have to speak about your idea. You have to go out there. You have to talk to people because you're gonna learn from people. You're gonna get feedback, and it's gonna shape your product more than you think. Um, Funnily enough, early on, I used to think that I need to keep my idea for myself. It seemed like a genius idea, and oh my God, someone's gonna steal it, and someone with resources can copy it and do it. That doesn't work. If someone can accomplish it faster than you and capture a bigger market than you, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, they deserve it more than you. So it goes back to the law of attraction, and you need to speak it into existence. It was a big lesson for me, and yeah, I completely agree.
So I guess this is a good segue to talking about the company. So tell us a
Mhm.
bit about what you're trying to build and how it got started. Like right from the beginning, how did you decide that I'm actually going to go for it? I'm going to start my own business and I'm fully committed.
All right. It's kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. Um, so I left my last job, and I didn't want to jump back in directly into the professional market. Even though I was doing some interviews, I was kind of curious, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I went back to Lebanon for a visit for the first time since I moved out. So the first time in almost 3 years, and I saw so many of my friends that I hadn't seen in years. One or two of them had very recently launched their own companies, their own startups, and it was super inspirational. And I don't want to feel insulting or anything, but I felt a very strong sense of, if they can do it, why the hell can't I?
Yeah.
So I'm someone who's very confident. I wasn't always confident, but I mean I was always kind of confident, but it was very hard to acknowledge between you and yourself, because sometimes you have imposter syndrome. But anyways, I came back to Canada with the mindset of, I need to start something. I don't know what, but I need to find a problem, and if there's no solution for it, then I'm gonna do it. So, interestingly enough, I was already into running. I had my community of runners. I had my community of athletes as well, because, like I told you, we do calisthenics where we go to parks and do these pull ups and muscle ups and random stuff. So, there was a community vibe going on. We were using random apps for it, whether it's Instagram or WhatsApp, very basic apps. And I became addicted to Strava as well. Strava is this big running app. They had like 200 million users almost. So Strava always felt like it lacked on the social side, even though it's really nice to post your workouts. It's not nice to not be able to coordinate workouts. And something that happened frequently with me was, every time I posted to social networks about my workout or my run or my whatever, people would would ask me to tell them the next time I go there, so that they can join me. And I felt this sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, that was coming from a lot of people who wanted to learn and who wanted to improve but just didn't know where to start. And I realized that what happened to me a few years ago, like what made me start working out, was I was put into a WhatsApp group where people were sending their workout schedule, and all you had to do was show up there, and you would feed off their motivation, and they would teach you. So I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if it makes sense to the audience, but everything clicked in like an instant. I saw the product. I had the vision very quickly. It's funny because the company is called Quick, but it all connected very spontaneously, and I'm sure founders can relate to that. And it made perfect sense. I need to create a product that basically solves this problem. No more FOMO. People know when and where you're working out, and so they can join you because your friends are your best motivators and teachers. And you can use that for any sport, whether it's from running to climbing to whatever. You live in Canada, like all sorts of sports are popular here. So if
And
you have a
Mark,
friend, yeah.
do you think it's fair to say that if this app existed, when you first started off running and looking for these different activities, do you think this is something you really wanted to use or you would have used if it existed, and that's why you were thinking, well, I need this, so why not build it?
That's a great question. So the first conversation I had with my original developer, his answer was, "Oh my God, that's a great idea. I would use it, so I'm gonna build it for you." And it's funny that you're phrasing it that way. So this immediately gave me a lot of confidence, and I realized, because he's a sportsy person, but he's not like a runner or a triathlete or anything. So I realized that there's a huge potential for it, because he's saying that he would use it. It means other people and normal people, not like fitness obsessed people like myself, would go for and use. And also, funnily enough, down the road, at first I thought there's nothing similar to it. We're very innovative, which we are. And down the line, you become paranoid. You obsess over your competition. So by doing unlimited amounts of research, I started founding bits and pieces of my app, but scattered across many different apps. And so the beautiful thing about us is that we're creating like a super app, but in the same way minimalistic, that will be very intuitive to use, but that solves so many problems to the average gym goer or aspiring gym goer or fitness enthusiast.
This is quite interesting. So, do you when you first start thinking about the idea and developing it, did you actually pitch it to people around you? Did you ask around, or was it your own personal research? How did you validate it from the market? How did you get that?
Great question. One of the first people I spoke to is my oldest and best friend, and he happens to own. He used to own a couple gyms in Beirut, and I figured if I speak to him, he's gonna have some great insight because he ran these businesses, and so I at first, obviously, like any idea, you get an idea, you solve a problem, you don't think about how you monetize it. And so by speaking to him, he said something very interesting, and it also connected like the way I described earlier, how everything connected in a second. The business model immediately like popped in my brain, and it made perfect sense. So I also realized by this from this interaction that you need to always speak things into existence by just discussing it with your peers, with people who might be experts. So yes, totally. I did organic research, interviewing people. Like every time I would go to a park or I would go to a run club, I would ask people, "What are you using? Do you have go-to apps for these things?" And I would collect feedback and I would iterate with my product 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because a lot of people would ask their friends and family, and it's almost always a positive reaction, which is the worst sample of people to ask for any kind of idea. So it's great to get out there and actually talk to end users and stakeholders, just like you did. And so I want to go to a different angle here. Are there any moments, because you've been at this for more than a year now, any moments or like lessons you learned? I'm not gonna call them regrets, but lessons you learned along the way. Maybe you can give them for people who are starting right now. Do you have any advice for people who are just kicking off? Maybe something you would have done differently?
Hmm. I'm gonna repeat myself here. The most important lesson I learned, I would say, is you have to be vocal about it. You have to speak it because and this lesson happened for me when I spoke to another founder who is still in the industry for he's been in the industry for like almost 6 years now, and he has a really nice application. Um, and he told me this very important point, which is if you don't speak it out, you're not going to get feedback, and if you're afraid that someone's going to steal your idea, then they deserve to steal your idea. You're just not working hard enough on it. So this is my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice, I'm going to combine two actually into one. If you have an idea, if you believe in it, what's the point of not acting on it? If you're not gonna act on it, you're never gonna know, and you're gonna be on your deathbed in 50 years, and you're gonna be like, what if? What if I tried? It would have worked, and then you're gonna see eventually someone create the exact same idea, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, that was my idea. It should have been me. So there's no point in regretting. There's no point in not trying, and you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself, and it's the most important thing, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one's going to believe in you or in your idea. So there's this kind of healthy delusion that you have to create, because trust me, whoever's watching, you need to trust me, people feed off your confidence, and they realize when you know what you're talking about, they can trust you, they can go to war with you, and they will follow you, and they will do as you say. And this is something I discovered in my late 20s. I never knew I was like that until I started shifting my mentality and the way I communicate with people.
That's interesting, Mark. And how do you think starting this business in Canada affects your like do you think the environment here helps or doesn't help? Obviously, we deal with extreme weathers. here, and you're building
Extreme.
a yeah. Well, if to put it relatively for the audience, if we're around 0 degrees, that's a good day.
That's a great thing.
That's a good.
Um, yeah, man. Um, Look, there's there's always a sacrifice you're gonna have to make. One of your guests that I was watching is based in Dubai, and he speaks about Dubai. He speaks highly of it, and it's funny because he actually says that he's maybe delusional about it. So what I always tell people is, whatever you are, you're gonna face, you're gonna have a trade-off, and it is what it is. That's how life works. There's no perfect environment, so you need to deal with these. You need to be okay with these, and it's true that Canada has extreme conditions. I completely agree, but what's the point in complaining or being down about it? You need to use these conditions. It's gonna shape you. If you're isolated for 3 months like we are like every year, we're subjected to these very harsh conditions. You can go learn skiing, you can go learn snowboarding like you were just telling me earlier.
Yeah.
This is all in your control, so you either fight it and you overcome it, or it's gonna eat you, so it's up to you.
So do you think this is actually an opportunity for you? Do you view it that way?
Yes, like diamonds are formed under pressure, right? So what's the point of having comfort? Like if you're comfortable in your job, if you're chasing comfort and luxury and just having a normal life, you can go live with your parents, or you can go live in Dubai or somewhere where everything is brought to you on a plate, you know. But if you're put in an environment like Canada, I really think it's a blessing in disguise. You need to use it to your own advantage. Otherwise, it's going to break you, unfortunately.
So Mark, what's the vision here? Where do you see this going? Let's say 1 year and 5 years down the line. What's the what's the dream here? Where do you want to take this?
Mm. Um, Honestly, I was super extremely confident at the beginning with the timelines. I was underestimating the beast at hand. But if there's one thing I learned, it's that things you don't know about happen, and it's gonna delay your vision and ambition, but it's not gonna cancel it. If you keep on working on it, it's gonna happen. Personally, my dreams and my vision for this have no limit. Again, I'm someone who's very confident. I've done so much research. I lose sleep at night thinking of ways this cannot work, and I can't find any. So this is my first podcast. Your audience should know this. This is my first podcast doing this sort of thing. But a year ago, I was telling my friends I'm going to be on podcasts. I'm going to be on Diary of a CEO. I'm going to be on all these big podcasts, maybe Joe Rogan someday, not the most popular, I know, but you have to believe. You have to believe, because again, you're your first supporter. And once you manifest this confidence, once you really work hard for it, people will follow you. They will believe in your vision, and they will make it happen with you.
And do you think there's a startup ecosystem around you? Do you think this is this plays to your advantage? Because there's so many new companies that open, especially like I don't know if people know about this about Canada, but the startup world here is crazy. Especially in recent years, I've seen so many people give a shot at starting their own companies. I think that
Mm.
was the post-COVID effect when people started working remotely and they were like, you know what, maybe I can start something of my own. So do you see this as an opportunity for you? And does the environment help?
So I feel like there's two questions in your question. Um, Absolutely. First of all, post COVID, people definitely started doing more, but I'm not sure about the exact reasons, but I theorize that a lot of investors were also excited, so money was thrown out a bit randomly. A lot of these startups don't exist anymore because they were, I would say, rushed into production and into existence. However, and upon doing a lot of research, I really had to decide if I'm going to launch here in Quebec, in Montreal specifically, or it's better for me to start maybe in Miami in Florida, somewhere where the weather is better. But Quebec actually has really good laws that support these things. We have a lot of grants. The government encourages these things. Now, obviously, taxation is a big problem here, but it's fine. We can like my vision for this company is way bigger than a few taxations. Even if we're taxed a big amount of money, we're gonna make way more, so it's not a problem. But yeah, I think it's definitely the perfect place to do it, and eventually, like as I said, we're in North America. There's 400 million people here. I thought early on that maybe Dubai is a better place, maybe Lebanon is a better place because I'm familiar with it. And then one of my investors and co-founder told me, like, why are you even thinking about it? There's like 10 million people here, and there's 400 million people there. So all you need is 1% of this population, 2% of this population, and you can become massive in this space.
That's yeah, I mean that's the vision, right? Looking at the 400 million people market instead of looking at the city where you're based. And so, do you think that it's going to be a challenge to grow out of your local environment because you're going to be dealing with just in Canada, if you move from province to province, it's a completely different culture. And I'm sure you've seen this. It's to people who haven't experienced it, if you go from Quebec to Ontario, it's like two different worlds. It's two different countries. It's completely different. So do you see this as a challenge, or do you think that um, you will adapt to the situation as you grow?
I completely agree. By the way, Quebec and Ontario are feel like different countries, and the thing is, I thought hard about this when designing the product, and I'm gonna tell you, just like music, fitness is an international language. I would say everyone understands it. Everyone wants to improve their physical fitness, the way whether it's for the way they look or the way they feel. Um, so we designed this product with consumer behavior, with a consumer behavior approach for it to grow organically, no matter where we expand to. And so my belief is just like Instagram and Facebook, because we're a social media app, to clarify. So just like Instagram and Facebook and these guys grew very organically, very quickly. I don't see why we cannot do the same thing. So on top of that, we also added monetary incentives. So there's a nice gamification towards the game, towards the app. I mean, that gives people incentive to create stickiness to the app, and it actually made us pivot from the original model. We were thinking of an original model at first, and then by going through these things, analyzing the way people think, we completely shifted into something more kind of easier to grow organically. So I'm very ambitious. I don't see why we cannot grow very quickly.
Mark, I love the attitude. I told you before, I met most of my closest friends through by doing activities, by doing sports activities, and it really changed my entire social circumstances, especially here in Canada, because the culture is a bit tough to adapt to because everyone's like so focused on their own. Then winter comes and people start hibernating. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm really excited to see where this will go. And I would love to have another conversation with you maybe a year down the line and see how this all turned out. And to end this, do you have anything to say to the audience?
First of all, thank you so much for your excitement. This is my mission. I want to solve this problem. And hopefully down the line, like you said, in a year or so, we're gonna be filming the next episode in a studio. Your podcast is gonna go off as it should. For the audience, I cannot wait to share this product with everyone. I really think it's gonna solve a lot of problems because fitness, everything is downstream from fitness. I'm quoting a well-known fitness influencer, and he says that everything is downstream from fitness. If you fix your physical fitness, it will fix the rest of the aspects in your life. If you're depressed, if you're feeling lazy, if you're feeling out of energy all the time, just sweating for 30 minutes is going to help you deal with all of this. And so the way we're doing it is by giving you access to your friends' schedules of training schedules. So you can just use motivation that's already out there, and it's a social approach to it, and I'm sure you will love it.
That's awesome, Mark. Thank you very much. This was awesome. This was a great discussion, and I can't wait to hear from you again.
Thank you, Antoine. Have a great day.
You too. See ya.